Hey, Tommy from the Run Testers with another running shoe versus. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at the Saucony Ride 17 and the Hoka Mach X. Let's dive in and take a look. The Hoka Mach X costs £160 or $180, weighs 242 grams or 8.5 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 5mm. The Saucony Ride 17 costs £135 or $140. It weighs 285 grams or 10 ounces for men in a size 8, and the drop is 8mm. The Mach X is a shoe that Hoka fans have been eagerly awaiting, designed to take learnings from the impressively versatile Mach range and combine that with a propulsive plate. That plate sits between two layers of foam, EVA to provide a supportive ride, and a new PEBA section to improve responsiveness and rebound. That combination is built to feel soft for easy sessions, but with plenty of pop for faster efforts. Other features include a creel jackered upper for breathability and comfort, a gusseted tongue, and a generous layer of outsole rubber for grip and durability. The Saucony Ride 17 receives a big update in the form of a new PWRRUN Plus midsole, the same material used in the Triumph 21. This addition dramatically changes the experience of running in the Ride to provide more cushioning, increased energy return, and a smoother transition. Built for daily miles, the Ride 17 aims to provide a balance of comfort, versatility, and a touch of stability for ticking off the miles. The upper also sees an upgrade with a new engineered mesh design to improve breathability and a 360-degree fit to ensure a good lockdown. On the outsole, there's a generous layer of rubber to protect the midsole and provide a good level of grip on varied road surfaces. And there's plenty of interior padding for a plush level of step-in comfort.
Now when it comes to fit, like many Hoka running shoes, the Mach X come up a bit narrow across the top of the midfoot, I find. And into the toe box, it's snug. It's definitely a dialed in racer fit that might come up a little bit narrow around the toe knuckle specifically, and that may be problematic on some longer duration runs. So just a word of caution on that. The Ride 17, however, the fit was much more spot on. It's roomy but not baggy. There's good heel hold, lockdown across the midfoot, but there's enough flex and wiggle room in that toe box to offer it up to, I think, longer duration runs, with good security across the midfoot without any restriction as well though. Now I think some runners might want to go half a size up in the Mach X, particularly if you're planning on using them for longer runs, 2 hours plus, that kind of thing. For the Ride 17, I'd recommend going true to size.
Okay, so fit for me in these two shoes, I'm a size 8 in the UK, these are both size 8s. The Ride 17, I would say stick to my size in this, it's absolutely fine, no issues at all. The forefoot is probably slightly narrower than some shoes, but still plenty of room for me. I have pretty average width feet, so I've had absolutely no issues with it at all, and there's plenty of space just before my big toe in the forefoot. So I would stay to my size in the Ride 17s. The Hoka Mach X, it's a Hoka, so it is a little bit narrower than some other shoe brands. This is a size 8 in the UK as well. I've found the fit to be fine, but I did find it a little bit narrow. Not an issue for me because as I said, I don't have particularly wide feet. But if you did, you might have an issue with the Mach X. But I would stay to my size in this. There's still plenty of room for me before the toe, and it's quite a comfortable shoe. So these are both shoes that you'd probably look at for daily training miles, but the Hoka Mach X, when it came out, before it came out, we were all very excited because the idea of putting a plate into the Hoka Mach series was a really interesting prospect. So the Hoka Mach 5 and the Hoka Mach 4 are two of our favourite shoes when it comes to really versatile daily training miles. They're really fast, they're really lightweight feeling shoes. You can do really hard training sessions in them, but they're also pretty nicely cushioned as well without being too max stack cushioned. So those shoes were just really solid all-round trainers, and I love training in the Hoka Mach 5 for Chicago when I did it last year or year before last. When the Hoka Mach X came out, a lot of people were saying it was going to be the biggest shoe of the year, that you stick a plate in the Hoka Mach 5 and you get a phenomenal fast training shoe. It doesn't really do that. It's not necessarily a shoe that is focused heavily on speed. It's a very solid daily shoe. You can do comfortable training in it. You can do lots of longer training sessions in it. It's a good daily shoe, but it's not really a phenomenally fast shoe for training in. There are much better options out there, and so just having the fact that it's got a plate in it doesn't really make it like a super fast shoe. It just adds a little bit of efficiency gains in it and just gives it a bit more of a rolling motion. I would still go for the Hoka Mach 5 over the Hoka Mach X just because of the versatility of that shoe, and that shoe doesn't have a plate in it. So even though the Mach X sounds like it should be a super shoe, really it's a bit more of a daily shoe that has a plate in it, which is sort of what we saw with things like the original Carbon X range, which came out around the same time as like the early Vaporflies, but it really wasn't a shoe that was designed to compete with the Vaporfly, because it just feels a lot more like a daily shoe that is nice and comfortable for longer sessions and things like that. So the Hoka Mach X is a shoe that is pretty much just a solid, good daily trainer, nice, consistent pace, good for longer sessions. I've used this for a bit of marathon training and it was good for the longer runs, things like that, but it's not the most versatile shoe in the world, and it's worth noting that because it's quite easy to think of this as like a super shoe. The Ride 17, the previous versions of the Ride, they were fine. I wasn't a massive fan of them. The Rides 15 and 16, I thought they were solid daily shoes. They didn't have a lot to give me from them. They didn't have a particularly exciting midsole foam. They didn't have a lot of bounce in them. They weren't particularly responsive. I raced in the Ride 15 and I really struggled to maintain the pace that I would normally race at. So at the time I was running 38-minute 10Ks and I did a 41-minute 10K, and I really found that the shoe made a difference on that. It just didn't feel like it had any major life in it or any way that it was making me run faster. The new Ride 17 has the same foam in it, the PWRRUN Plus, that's in the Triumph 21 and the 20, and it's a significantly improved foam. It's just a great foam. It's really balanced. It has a nice little bit of compression in it, so you don't get loads of bounce from it, but you do feel like it's helping you maintain a nice consistent pace and giving you a little bit of energy back as well. It's also slightly firm midsole in the Ride 17. It's not as firm in the Triumph 20 and 21, but it's slightly firmer, but that does give it a bit of responsiveness as well. So it's a fairly rigid shoe, and the fact that the Hoka Mach X has got a plate in it doesn't necessarily make it any more rigid than the Ride 17. So they are quite similar from that point of view. And I'd use these shoes for the same thing. I get a similar ride from both of these shoes. And I find them both to be solid at daily training miles, for longer runs, those sorts of things. And yeah, they're pretty comparable. So it really comes down to me to the price, and I think the Ride 17 is significantly better priced than the Mach X. So I definitely say that it's a better value shoe around, the Ride 17. The other thing I would say about both of these is that there's a great outsole on the Ride 17, solid covering of rubber. It's been very wet in Brighton recently, and it's been fine. It's been absolutely great at gripping the ground. Mach X is okay. I've not had any issues with it, but it's not as good as the Ride 17. The outsole is just a little bit smoother. So yeah, I'd definitely say the Ride 17 has a better outsole.
So in testing, I've now run north of 50 miles in both of these shoes across my usual test mix of paces and terrain. That includes easy miles right up to all-out intervals. I've also raced a half marathon in the Mach X, and I've done 3-hour long runs in both of the shoes. All of that on a mix of asphalt, tarmac, and some light river paths and off-roading in parks, bits like that thrown in for good measure. I've also done a side-by-side mile with one shoe on each foot to find out how they feel when I'm wearing them at the same time. And this is what I found. So I've just finished my side-by-side mile. I've got the Hoka Mach X on the left foot. I've got the Saucony Ride 17 on the right foot. It's been a little while since I've actually put the Mach X on. When I came out to do this, I didn't put these two shoes in the same ballpark. Now I've got them on side-by-side. Remarkably similar. Again, I sort of say this sometimes. It's a bit of a shock to me when it happens, particularly with a shoe like this. In my head, I thought the Mach X, light, racy, faster, stripped back. I thought the Ride 17 would be more of like a low to kind of mid-pace, can handle faster shoe. But actually, once you've got them on, there's a lot here that feels similar in the ride underfoot, at least in what these shoes can both do in my book. So let's talk about some of the differences then. One of the big things here, I think you can feel the rocker far more pronounced in the Mach X under the ball of the foot. It may encourage you to sort of roll through onto that toe far quicker than the Ride 17. They just run a little bit flatter. They are rockered, and And when you're running just in the Ride 17, you notice the rocker and it helps you with easy clip along, plenty fine, but you get more of that in the Mach X. The fit, much tighter, much snugger, much more racy on the Mach X 2. Your foot feels well held, well cradled. It's definitely a bit more racy. I think, you know, you've got a wider platform on the Ride 17 here as well, and you notice that with that kind of heel and forefoot flaring. So the Ride 17 then is offering up a bigger platform to land on. You've got that kind of wider flared forefoot and the heel. The Mach X is a little bit slimmer, which makes it a little bit more precise. It's a little bit more nimble, a little bit more agile. That adds to that overall racy feel. The other thing you've got on the Ride 17 is a smaller stack, but a bigger drop. I'm not sure I noticed that as much because of that big kind of ruckering that happens up in the forefoot of the Mach X. That makes it feel more kind of drop than it is, I think, or at least rolls you into that kind of toe far quicker. There's a small difference in the weight, but I don't think you notice that a huge amount here. Yes, I think the Mach X is the lighter shoe. Again, that keys into its kind of more racy feel, and that's going to be the key difference for me here. Overall, when you're running around in these, you notice the rockering makes for a faster clip. They're lighter, they're more agile, they're more nimble, and that is the Hoka Mach X. It makes them feel more racy, but they are cushioned and protective enough, I think, to do some longer runs. If I was going to go for a 3-hour run, I'd rather put on the Ride 17. If I was going to go and try and belt out a really fast 10k, I'd rather put on the Mach X. And that's pretty much how I would decide between these two shoes. I think they're both pretty good, capable, versatile daily trainers. One is tuned slightly more to the fast, one is probably tuned a little bit better to the slower, but you can do both or all kinds of runs in both, I believe. And yeah, I like both of these shoes. They really tick the box for me. They've got my kind of ride, they've got my kind of feel on the foot. They both feel pretty natural the minute you put them on. There's good comfort on the foot. Both hold really well. You've got the Mach X is a bit more tight and dialed in when it comes to the fit. There's a bit more room in the toe box of the Ride 17, which lends it a bit more, I think, again, to going long. So if you're thinking about a shoe that you might use for an ultra, where you just want a shoe that's going to give a reliable roll, clip through comfort and protection, but you need a bit more of a roomy toe box, it's definitely going to be the Ride 17 over something like the Mach X. Verdict then, well, when we did the Hoka Mach X review, I said this was one of my shoes of the year, and I stick by that. It's light, fast, agile, it feels punchy, but it's still protective. It offers good comfort and versatility. It's probably better at the mid to faster end of the spectrum though. The newer Saucony Ride 17, meanwhile, is also one of my favourite shoes of recent launches. There's excellent disappearing comfort, really good ride that balances cushioned landings with rolling response and springy energy. For me, it's one of those shoes that really feels natural straight out of the box, and it's easy to run in over any distance. It can handle some of the faster stuff, but it's better at the lower to mid paces, and it's good for longer endurance efforts as well. Now, these are both excellent daily trainers. The Mach X is a lively, racy daily trainer that's better at the fast than the slower, but lands firmly in the pile of shoes marked can handle anything. The Ride 17 can also cover a wide variety of efforts, but it's at its best when you're moving at the mid to lower end of your pace spectrum. So there's lots of crossover in what both these shoes can do, but I think there's arguably room to have both of these shoes in your rotation too, if you really choose to. But if I had to choose one, I think that for the 80-20 mix of easy to high intensity runs that you do when you're doing marathon training, I think the Ride 17 will cover more of your weekly miles at a lower price, so there's a bit more value here for me. But if you want something snappier that you can even race in, the Mach X is probably the one to go for. The Ride 17 is a comfortable workhorse. The Mach X is a bit more fun. If I had to choose one shoe, as I said, it'd be the Ride 17, and that's just because of the types of runs that I'm doing right now, which are, you know, border on the easier really. Now, but if I wanted a shoe that could handle most of my marathon training and maybe then take as an option to race in, it would be the Mach X.
Okay, so my verdicts on these two shoes, I think it's pretty obvious what I'm going to go for. I think they are pretty similar in what they deliver. I think they are, I'd use them for the same things basically. So it really comes down to the price for me, and Ride 17 will get it all the way. If I was buying either of these shoes, I'd definitely go for the Ride 17. I don't think the Mach X really delivers a lot for what you're paying for it. I don't think the plate in it really makes a massive difference. As I said, I'd probably buy the Hoka Mach 5 over this, and it's a cheaper shoe. So yeah, the Ride 17 I'd go for all the way. I think it's a solid, comfortable, enjoyable shoe to run in, and just feels nice and stable as well. It's a very, very stable shoe. Hoka Mach X is pretty stable as well, but I just think the Ride 17 tops it. So I'm going Ride 17 all the way. I just think it's a better all-round, better value daily training shoe that gives you pretty much everything you're going to get from the Mach X. That's it from us. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click that little bell and all those other things that make us happy, and check out the channel for all the other videos we've got coming out at the moment. Catch you next time.